Next question is, what do you see as Georgia's #1 educational challenge?
I would have to say graduation rates. And getting our youth, getting our youngsters graduated, not only graduated, but graduated so that they are work ready, if not work ready, or along with work ready, or they can go to technical school or to a 4-year college. You know, with 1,700 employees, one of the most critical needs for skilled labor in my company. And what we need to make sure our students, when they're graduated, that they are ready to go to work. Not just hard skills, but soft skills. Look you in the eye. Understand I have to be here at 8, lunch is for an hour, I get off work at 4:30. I'm responsible for my actions. They also have to be educated and ready to get to work. And if they want to go to a tech school, we got to understand that that tech school play a very important part in our education model. Students need to go, if they want to be a computer analyst, but they don't think they want to go to college, or if they want to be a welder, or they want to be a plumber, or they want to be an electrician, all of those jobs need to be trained and ready to go. If they want to go on to a 4-year university, great. I think that's wonderful as well. But we've got to understand, you've got to make sure that as we bring them up through the ranks and we get them graduated, and keep their interest. When you keep a child's interest, you keep a child in school. We want to make sure that we keep their interest and we keep them in school and we get them graduated. Thank you.
Thank you. Cheryl?
Well, budget cuts have come up recently because of the economic recession. But right prior to that, we actually had an economic boom. A lot of people were moving here, and we had more money than we'd had before. The way to keep people moving here, and it goes along with what Fitz was saying, is that I've been to Chamber of Commerce meetings before where employers are looking for 2 things if they want to move their business to Georgia. And by moving their business in, there's more tax revenue from that business, and there's more taxes from the families that they bring here. But those businesses want to know, does Georgia provide them an educated workforce? And sometimes an educated workforce just means, are these people fluent in English? And so that's one of the things that I want to talk about. The second thing is if they come, they want to know if the schools are good enough for their children. Will they still get into the same college they would have gotten into if they hadn't moved to Georgia, or get the same training for possible jobs? And so if we don't provide those 2 things to the businesses that want to come in here for economic development, we won't have a tax base to draw from to fund these mandates. Now back to English. I feel strongly on this because I've had some in-classroom experience with this, that you're familiar with English as a second language class. And just like one size doesn't fit all for all of us, for our children, it doesn't fit the same for people who don't speak English. In one little group of 3, I had a girl that was fluent in in English, but she never raised her hand because she was shy, so the teachers assumed she didn't know English. But the other 2 little boys couldn't understand me forever. In ESOL, you only speak in English. When they couldn't understand me, I finally switched to Spanish. They still didn't know the answers to the questions, even though I spoke their language. Finally, I said, what grade were you in school in Mexico? And they said, we've never been in school before today. They were in the 6th grade. My heart goes out to those kids. If we want an educated workforce, if we want people that are going to be taxpayers and self-sufficient, we need to educate all children. And that was not done during Leave No Child Behind. They were put out as a subgroup.
Thank you. Helen?
Thank you. I'm going to go one step further on Mr. Johnson's things that I agree with about graduation rate, but too often we look at the graduation rate on the backside when it happens in May of that graduation year. What we have to look at is to make sure that kindergarten, 1st grade, 2nd grade, 3rd grade, that every child is prepared for the next grade. Because when we get to the senior year, we don't have to worry about whether they're going to graduate or not, because they are prepared to graduate when they enter as a senior. Not we're worried about it in April of their senior year if they've passed the end of course test, or they've not passed this test, or they're on the border of passing this required subject. That we need to make sure in our K through 12 system, because sometimes we treat or we speak just on the backside as a 12th grader. Well, if we would talk about our kindergarten students who are going to be in their prime earning wage life in 2050. Ladies and gentlemen, we better be very concerned about our kindergartners and our first graders and our third graders all the way up, and not just worry about their senior year and their graduation rate, but we worry about every child in every grade to make sure that when they finish the first grade, they are, we talk about ready for life, we better make sure they're ready for second grade, and then they're ready for third grade, and ready for fourth grade. And then when they get to high school, they'll be just fine. And we don't have to worry about graduation rate. Why? Because we took care of them K through 11. And that's where we need to get to. We need to test a lot less to make sure they're taught what they need to be taught and not taught towards a test. That we need to teach what we need to know in Georgia for our kids to be great. And we need to worry about the whole child, every grade.
Thank you, and I'll concur that the grad rate is problematic for us. Young people that do not graduate high school just have far worse outcomes overall. We have got to put things in place to assist these young people. I'll tell you there are two issues that contribute to the issue of lack of graduation, and we've got to be cognizant of it, and we've got to do something about it. I've always said that I create or eliminate 90% of my headaches with who I hire. We have got to work on setting up a system where we continue to attract the best and brightest to our field, that we don't treat our educators as second-class citizens, that we give them the support that they need. Because the single most important variable, once that child hits the classroom door, on how successful they're going to be, how far they're going to move, is the skill set of that classroom teacher. We want the best and brightest to come into the field, and quite frankly, with what's happened to our educators, it's not as appealing as it once was, even though the educators I know are absolutely passionate about their young people. The second part that we're talking about with a poor graduation rate is apathy, or students who do not see the relevance of what they are doing. We have got to help them find their passion. Our Pathways initiative that allows young people to have real-world experiences where they mentor with people in the world of work. These are the things that will help us help the young people find their passion. We don't lose young people because of a lack of aptitude. We lose the young people because they don't see the relevance of what they're doing. We have got to help them find that relevance so they'll stick with us and continue throughout the educational system. That will help us, and we've got to treat our teachers with more respect.
Thank you. I see some folks up here have been reading my blog. I'm so proud of that. The Department of Education isn't doing their job. That's the problem. That's the first letter in focus is for financial accountability and integrity. I'm going to give you two numbers, 0 and 20. 0, that's the number of financial accountability markers the state of Georgia has disclosure on for a public district. 20, that's the number of disclosures in the state of Texas. They have a system called the Financial Integrity Reporting System of Texas, the first system. It is no accident that they spend less per pupil and get an 87% graduation rate. And if you look right here, you can see where the jobs are going. We're in the negative column, folks. They're a big positive. They're our competition. Tennessee's our competition. Tennessee has an 86% graduation rate. We're at 71%. That is atrocious. And both of those states spend less per pupil than we do. So if we do care about teachers, and we all care about teachers, let me tell you why they're victims of this. They're victims because the bureaucracy has accrued all the benefit of the funding formula. Okay, we have seen epic bloat in bureaucracy. From 1992 through 2009, we had a 41% increase in student enrollment. During the same time, we had a 74% increase in administrators at the central office, not principals, at the central office and non-teaching staff. Had we held the growth rate of administrators to the growth rate of enrollment, every teacher could have $8,000 more in that pocket, in their back pocket right now. And That is why our graduation rate is low. We're not watching how we're spending our dollars. They're accruing to bureaucracy and not to teachers, not to the classroom, because we're not investing there. It's not rocket science, folks. Other states are lapping us because they are driving money into the classroom. Texas also has a thing called FAST, the Financial Allocation Study of Texas, and they measure the efficacy of every dollar. We need to do the same. Thank you.
Again, this is a very easy question for, an educator and somebody that has seen our kids, at the high school level as a social studies teacher, but also work with them at the elementary and pre-K level. It's literacy. If we can teach our kids to read, we will open up the doors of opportunity. And that's what we need to really focus on. For myself as a high school teacher, when it came time to test, my kids knew facts. They knew figures. That was never the issue. It was their ability to read and comprehend. And lo and behold, you think about all the tests that we give in education, whether it's math, science, social studies, whatever, guess what you have to do? You have to be able to read. And so that's where we have to address the problem. If we are going to improve education, we have to make sure that our kids are literate. One of the things I've looked at that within some law enforcement agencies, they look at the literacy level or literate level at 3rd grade. At that point, they begin to determine how many beds they're going to need in their correction facilities. Georgia right now, I think according to the first, foundations, FERST, we graduate and have an average literacy level at about 8 or grade 8.5. So we need improvement there. That's something we have. My wife, who is a reading recovery teacher, says, Richard, the best thing that parents can do is, again, take a book and read 5 minutes a night. And so that's why I've committed that even before we get into pre-K, that we reach out to nonprofit groups such as the First Foundation, such as Dr. Ben Carson's, fund as well, our Lions Club, our Rotary Club. Let's put books in the hands of our kids, prior to getting into education. If our parents will sit down and read, we will increase their vocabulary, we'll increase their sentence structure, we will make a difference. That is where we attack it. We address it at the root, and again, we do it by addressing the needs of the kids. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Mary Kay?
So, as a math education professor, I teach classes in problem solving. So, the first problem that I'm going to solve is we're going to get rid of this whole discussion over standards, and then we're going to get all our financial house in order. But even if we solve the Common Core crisis and we have our financial house in order, there's something that we need across the state of Georgia. And I began teaching 25 years ago in Miami-Dade in an all-minority school, in a huge classroom. It had 3 different 5th grade classes and no walls. What were they thinking? I still think, what were they thinking sometimes of the decisions that are made? But what I did before I ran for school board, and I've been serving on the Fayette County School Board, even though I'm an education professor with 9 years in the classroom and 17 years in higher ed, I substituted at the high schools in our county. 4 out of the 5 high schools. I substituted at the middle school. I substituted at the elementary school. Nobody knew I was Dr. Mary Kay Bacalhau. There's a whole, it's big. The problems we have in Georgia are big. There's a lack of respect for teachers from the students. The students have a lack of respect for each other many times. And so many of these initiatives that are coming down and all of these new problems that we have with all these standards, they're causing our students not to respect our teachers even more. Because the teachers, they're doing things they don't necessarily agree with, they're being forced to do. So the biggest problem, I think, after all those other problems are solved, is having our students have respect for each other, have respect for their teachers, and of course respect for parental involvement. Now, the students that I met at the college level, they said that, they weren't prepared for college because they weren't learning anything. And that's one thing that is big. I don't know if I can solve that, but I can solve the other things.
Thank you. Kira?
To 2.5 years ago, Georgia signed on, well, it was before that, but 2.5 years ago, Georgia changed its graduation rate. And if you all remember, we went from 87.5% to 68%, right? So we all signed on with every other state to come up with a graduation formula that was in line with other states, yes? I don't think our problem is the graduation rate. I think the problem is that when you look at the highest state that graduates students, that's Iowa with an 87% graduation rate, their numeric passing score is a 60. So you look to Florida, their numeric passing score is a 63. New Hampshire, 60. Wisconsin, 63. Those are our top 3 states, and then Florida is our neighbor. Alabama is also a 60. So when we talk about graduation rates, if we aligned ourselves again with the other states as we have with our graduation rates, then we would see an immediate and valid jump in graduation rates. We would also see an immediate and valid drop in cost per pupil expenditures because our students are coming after they're failing these classes and taking them again on the taxpayer dime. And that's part of public education. So if we went ahead and aligned ourselves with the grading scales of the other states, then we would have, graduation rate wouldn't be a problem. The biggest challenge in education for me, for my students, that I see is affording our kids the freedom to choose. They need to be able to follow their passions. They need to be able to follow their promise. We need to allow our children to walk with their feet. I am very happy with my local public school. My daughter is happy there. We love what they're doing. It may not work for my son, and I want to be able, as a parent, to be able to allow my son or my daughter to move without having any headaches, without having any strife, and without having any issues that might come up. So the biggest challenge facing us is school choice.